All right, this is the Math Models Unit 8, Lesson 8 video. This lesson is one that I think is pretty confusing even to me. So we'll try to kind of get through it together. It's dealing with bonds, which are kind of investment, where you're basically buying debt. You're lending money to a government or even some corporation, and they're promising that they'll pay that money back to you with some interest. So it's a way that governments in particular can raise money, not through taxes. So you're going to be looking at these kinds of tables. You're going to have multiple bonds listed with all of this data for each one. So we're going to walk through each part and talk about how it kind of functions, and then we'll do some problems. So first of all, you have the name of the bond. SW Bell is the name of this bond. You have this information here. This is a little bit confusing, but there's kind of two separate numbers that you're dealing with here. One is the I shouldn't have done that. One is the interest, which is right here, 6.38. So that's the percent of interest paid per year. So remember, this is a percentage. So this is 6.38%. And then the 32 is the year that you will get paid back. It's what they call the maturity year. So 2032. So it's always the next date that has that ending. So this would be 2032 that this bond would mature. So we have our interest, we have our year, we have the current yield, which we're going to come back to. We have the volume, which is the number of shares that were sold that day in thousands. So this would be 5,000. You have the close, which is the price, which it tells you, which basically means it's the cost of 1,000 shares. So in order to find the value, you can see what they did down here. We have 0.8925. So imagine there's a decimal in front of this. So this number times 1,000 is what we get for the cost of 1,000 shares. And then this is the change from the previous day. You're really not going to deal with that very much. Back to the yield. The yield is this number, 6 3/8, divided by the closing price. Okay, so it's like 6 3/8 divided by 89 1/4. So you just divide those two numbers to get the current yield. And just remember that you're going to need to do this times 1,000 to find the actual number. So it's like 6.638 times 1,000. So you need to move the decimal place. And we'll talk about that when we get down to the bottom. So let's go look at the questions. So vocab until we get to number 4. Pretty straightforward on this first one. What's the maturity date for Deer Park ISD? Deer Park ISD is the last row on this table. And remember that the maturity date is this number right here, 29. See all of these numbers here? These are the years, 25, 40, 20, all these. The first number, remember, is the interest. So this is going to mature in 2029. And there it is right there. That's pretty straightforward. A lot of these are going to be like this. What's the interest paid by UPS? So UPS is right here, and the interest paid is this number, 8 3/8. Okay, so when you look down, it's like, oh, wait, what are these numbers? So remember that 8 3/8 is a percentage, right? So you have to remember that to convert that into a decimal, I'll just show you what I mean. 8 3/8 is, and we can look at it as a fraction, or I kind of want it to be a decimal, but I don't know why it's not doing that. There we go, 8 3/8. But remember, we need to divide that answer by 100, So this would be the actual decimal for that. Remember, we're just moving that decimal place 2 places so that it's in a decimal form. So 0.08375. And so we look down and that's our answer right here. So just remember that on all of the interest rates, you're moving the decimal place 2 places to convert it into a decimal when you ask for the interest rate paid. Number 6, how much interest would a bond of RMX pay each year? Remember, it's 1,000 shares. And so if we go RMX, we're looking over here and we see it's 14. And so we need to multiply that 14 times 1,000. Okay. So it's going to be 0.14, which is the decimal form of 14%, times 1,000. And we get 140. So you're always, whenever it says that number of shares, you're just, the interest, you're going to multiply the rate of the interest, in this case 14, which was 0.14 in a decimal, times 1,000, because it told us it's 1,000 shares. And so it's going to be $140. Keep going. I'm just going to do all these with you. There's only a couple of these. There's only one of these, I think, on the test. What is the maturity date for JCPenney? Again, looking at the final number, 97. That's a long, bond is a very long time. So that's that one. Pretty straightforward. What's the price of SDGE on the previous day? That's going to be your close. So, okay, 93875. Remember that's you need to multiply that times 10 to get the answer, which is why it's 93875. There it is right there. So remember, you're multiplying this number times 10. You purchased 7 Travelport bonds. What's the cost of the purchase? So we're going to take this 95.50. We're going to multiply it times 10, and then we're going to multiply we're going to have 7 of them. So we have 95.50 times 10 times 7. Oops. Answer times 7. So because remember, we have to adjust this closing price by 10, and then you have 6.6 or 6,685. Choose the correct answers by calculating the yield. Okay, so yield. This is the one thing you need to definitely know for the test. And so what you're doing here is we're going to take the bond interest and the closing, and that's the two things we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply this number and get that down into the form that we want it, 4 3/8. And we're going to multiply that times 1,000. We get that number right there. And we're going to multiply. We're going to divide, rather, by the close, which remember we need to adjust by 10. Answer divided by the close, which was 98.47. And that's going to be adjusted by 10. So I'm going to do that decimal there, 984. I get 4.44. And there it is, 4.4% is the current yield. We'll do one more just to drive the point home. So T-tips is 2 1/8. So 2 1/8. Do the answer times 1,000. And then divide that answer by the close with the decimal moved 1. So we're going to do 1,092.1. 1,092.1. Oh, it's in the wrong place. Let's go down here. 1,092.1. And it's going to be 1.94. 1.9 right there. So again, interest times 1,000, close times 10, divide them, and that gives you your current yield.